On behalf of Iowa APSI and the MIG, I'd like to welcome you to the third Employment First Summit. We know that you're busy, and we certainly appreciate your time and your effort. The first summit we had was attended by probably maybe 60 people, not counting the 30 of us and all of our guests that were putting it on. And this we have over 120. And so I think that says a lot for all of us who are trying to make integrated employment the first priority for all Iowans with disabilities. I would like and I'm going to do this different than I did last night. I'm just going to ask the Iowa APSI board members to stand up. They've worked really hard on this conference. Okay, girls, let's get up here. All right. Thank you. As well as we couldn't have done this without the MIG. What I want to talk about just briefly, in addition to welcoming all you guys. Everybody has a packet, and in your packet you have an agenda. We'll try to follow that closely. We do have a full day. We're not taking very many breaks. You can't leave this room. Yeah, you can. But we're not taking very many breaks because we're going to try to move through our panels because we have a lot of information that we want them to share with us. And so we have the break stuff in here. So feel free to, help yourself to the breaks. And if the restrooms are down the hall and around, and so again, take care of yourself, make yourself comfortable. If you have a phone, if you would turn it off or at least on vibrate, we'd appreciate that just for courtesy to everybody else. And also, I think what will happen today that there'll be a lot of discussions that we want to have, and that's wonderful. But if you really want to have a long discussion, and I don't know how to say this nicely, and please don't take it the wrong way, but kind of go out there so that other people, out in the foyer, so other people who still want to listen at that point can. But I do think as we hear what other states have done, as they've transformed their agencies, their state policies, and their state laws, that we will have discussions going on. And so we want that. Let's see. Okay. What I was asked to do was to talk a little bit about the 3 initiatives that we have going on here in Iowa. The other day, someone said the stars are aligning, and I think they're aligning for Iowa partly because of these 3 initiatives. We have AFP, Alliance for Full Participation. We have the SELN, the State Employment Leadership Network, and we have Employment First. AFP that's what it's all about. Alliance for Full Participation is about ensuring that all citizens with developmental disabilities and intellectual disabilities are fully included into the community. They're a little different than some of the other 2 initiatives because they focus only on individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And they also have a goal, a very specific goal of doubling the employment rate of individuals with developmental and other intellectual disabilities by the year 2015. They've also have 38 state teams, which Iowa is one. We've kind of coupled our AFP activities with our Employment First activities. And they also sent out a state scorecard, and it talked of things like how much collaboration is going on in your state, what's the leadership regarding employment, what about transition? And so they sent some things that they just asked our opinion about how our state was doing. And so the state team sent it out to all the folks, and we'll talk a little bit about those results. The other thing about AFP is that they're not just service providers, there's state agencies, there's advocacy groups, there's like the national group of the University Centers for Development and Disabilities are on there. The national group for the state DD councils are on there. So they really represent a broad range of people who are involved and participating in the Alliance for Full Participation movement. The second one we have is the State Employment Leadership Network. And again, this is a little different because what it is, and there's some information in your packet about it, it's a network of the state IDDD agencies. And the whole purpose is to help improve employment outcomes for people that state agency serves. And if you're a member of this network, which Iowa is, They provide services through technical assistance. They'll come and visit about special issues. They have online discussions. They also have phone calls. I'm not for sure how often, but we're very fortunate, monthly phone calls. We're very fortunate that we're part of that group. And also, you'll hear us say that we collect a lot of data, what we found, what some of our work groups have found. But sometimes that data isn't real usable or comparable to other things. And so one of the things that the SELN folks help us do is to kind of look at the data and how are other states collecting data? What are they collecting data on? And we're being able to use that. And then they also publish papers about issues that are facing all the other states. So see, Iowa just isn't out here flying by the seat of their pants, but they're part of this larger network that we can learn from what the other states are doing. The third initiative is the Employment First initiative. And it's a national initiative that is bringing the talk back to integrated employment. It's also looking at this as an economic development issue, helping people with disabilities get out of poverty. And also it's looking at the policies and funding, how they're not, we need to align them better at a national level also with integrated employment. In Iowa, our vision is that it's pretty simple, that people with disabilities are employed at the same rate and receive the same benefits as everybody else. You know, that's not really rocket science, but that's our goal. Our mission then is to change the beliefs, the fundings, the practices that get in the way of having people be employed. So our three initiatives, the AFP, it's looking at specifically at folks with developmental disabilities, and it had the scorecard and a specific goal. The SELN works with state agencies. I know it's cute, isn't it? And then Employment First. Now, Employment First looks at all disabilities. It's just not focusing on one group. And we have grassroots. We really started as a grassroots effort, but now we're trying to get policymakers involved also. But all three of these initiatives are focusing on transforming employment outcomes for people with disabilities. It used to be, people say, well, gosh, we have so much going on. There's three of them. What are we going to do? But they all do kind of take a different piece of the pie in terms of truly helping Iowans with disabilities. You know, competitive employment is the first and preferred outcome for everybody. Let's look at why we need these. What we know, the SELN also came and did they did an assessment, then they held some focus groups, as well as the scorecard through the Alliance for Full Participation, AFP. And they were pretty consistent in their findings. There was a lack of leadership in our state regarding employment. And I'm not talking necessarily about at the state. I'm talking about all levels where there could be leadership that there haven't been. Leaders can come from all areas, and so there just has not been a focus on integrated employment in our state. Lack of consistent data. Like I said, we collect a lot of data, but so much of it isn't comparable. You know, you're looking at apples and oranges, and sometimes a pear is thrown in there. I tell you, it's just very complex. Lack of collaboration. Sometimes there's talk about collaborating, but it seems, according to these, the surveys, the assessment and the scorecard, there seems to be more talk of collaboration than actual collaborating. Lack of statewide quality transition services. And what we found out was that there are pockets of excellence in this state regarding transition. The problem is they don't go any further than just right there in that corner. We don't take them and replicate them. And sometimes I don't even think we know about them. Funding and policies promote segregated services. We found that out to be really true as we look at some of the other information that I'll share in half a second. And we also found out that there's a lack of formalized training efforts. Yesterday we had a meeting about looking at how we can make competitive employment the first and preferred activity, and I was dismayed to hear that just funding won't fix it. I'm going, oh no, I thought we could do this here. But apparently not. But what you do need are quality transition services. You do need leadership at all levels. You need outcome data that you can measure, because what gets measured gets done. So we have a little bit of work to do, but that's okay. because we know where we are now. What else do we know? At 28%, that's the number of Iowans with disabilities who are working. The 70%, that's the number of Iowans without disability who are working. At 18.3% of Iowans with disabilities live in poverty, as opposed to the 10.4. What else do we know? Department of Education did a survey in 2009, and basically what they found was that 92% of the parents of youth with disabilities expect their son or daughter to work in the community, regardless of disability. I mean, they talked about 2 disabilities, up to 6 disabilities, and 7 to 11 disabilities. 92% expect their son or daughter to work in the community. I'm not for sure our system is ready for that. We know about our VR closures and support employment. All closures and support employment is the blue line. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities is the red line. It's going down. Percent, because some people say, well, numbers don't mean anything, you have to look at the percentage. Well, we're still getting the same thing. Now, I don't know what that means. Well, I know kind of what it means, but at the same time, because we have waiver services and county services kicking in, so we have to be careful always when we're interpreting data. I don't usually say that, but I thought I should. Percent of closures in employment, if you look at all closures and then closures with folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities, so they're kind of keeping up, but if you look at it, they're all under 50%. Oh, now this will get you, okay? You know, VR is a partnership between the federal portion that funds some things and then the state, the non-federal, funds so much. And it's 78, we used to say 80-20, but it's 78.7 for federal, and it's 21.3 for the non-federal, the state match. So for every dollar that VR they get from the federal government $3.69. So now think about this. If you put $1 every night, you put $1 at night in your piggy bank, and the next morning you woke up and you almost had 4, wouldn't you continue to do that? Well, because of the budget cuts and because of the inability of VR to make the match, to find the state dollars, we've left $14 million on the table that could have been used for services. Now see guys, where were we when that was happening? See, leadership at all levels. We should have been writing our legislators. VR's easy. I mean, it's got pretty good data because they're required every year to file a pretty comprehensive report. DHS is a little harder, but that's why this is 204 data, because that's the last time they submitted to this voluntary data collection. So we have people with IDDD who their closures are going down in VR, and yet we know that, well, it speaks for itself. The green is facility work. The pinkish is facility non-work, and then integrated settings is the smaller one. 61% of folks with IDDD are served in facilities in Iowa. Okay, now I know I got this right. Again, you have to watch these dollars because it doesn't include supported community living, because then that really makes everything really goofy. We spend all the money together, over $76 million on disability services, MHDS and the counties. So waiver, Medicaid, and counties. Of that, about 43 million, or 57%, is spent on work-related services. The rest are spent on non-work-related services, about 32 million, or 43%. And that's not unusual. We're kind of right in the middle, I believe. Okay, but now let's look at this. Of this money that's spent on work-related services, 79% is spent on segregated services. which means 21% is spent on integrated or community-based services. Now see, how can we expect people to get jobs if we spend all of our money on segregated services? Okay, so we have to change. We know that. Why? Because we have the Rehab Act. The Rehab Act is all about integrated competitive employment, people having choices, people being included, self-determination, being respected, being part of the community. We have the DD Act, same thing, helping communities welcome people with disabilities, full inclusion. I mean, it's in the laws. We have the ADA. You know, I think sometimes we think about the ADA, at least I used to, about curb cuts and, you know, different formats and all that, but I think we missed the part of the point. It's also talking about people with disabilities should not be served in segregated settings when an integrated setting would be just as good and doesn't cost any more and the person wants to do it. The integration mandate. That's what the Olmstead Act or decision is based on, that mandate for integration. And we sometimes think of Olmstead only looking at residential, but no, it's being expanded to employment. There's 2 states right now that are, you know, kind of battling it out, if you will, with the Department of Justice about Olmstead violations because of the amount of segregation they have. And then we know it's just the right thing to do. Okay, so we're going to continue our journey of our transformation. We know where we're at, and we know where we want to go. Now, if I could have made this road longer, I would have, because we know this is going to be a process. It's going to be a long road to hoe, if you will. And so today, so this part in here, you know, this right here, this little curvy part that's going to get tricky, that's what today is all about. We're going to hear from agencies who have transformed from segregated to inclusive services. We're going to hear from states that have changed their policies to promote employment first, employment as the first and preferred outcome for people with disabilities. And we're going to hear from states that have changed their laws to promote employment first. So what I asked folks to do was to look at these 4 questions. And they're not going to say, okay, SueAnn, question number 1 is. They're going to weave it through their presentations. 1, why did they make this change? Why did they make the transformation? How did they do it? What happened? And what did we learn? What did they learn? So we can learn from them as we continue our journey of transformation. So we have a full day. We're going to have, each one of those is a panel, and at the end of the day, we're going to bring it back to Iowa and talk about what's happening with some of the agencies here, or one in particular that's trying to make the transformation. What kind of policies and laws do we have in Iowa that promote or hinder employment first? I'm just going to say employment first, okay, because that's a lot easier than saying that employment is the first and preferred activity. All right, so we're all clear with that. And then we're going to have people tell us about some federal laws and policies that promote and inhibit employment first. The way we've structured this is that we'll have the panels, and then at the end of the panel, we're allowing time for questions. And so that we could kind of make it work better, we thought, was there's 3x5 cards on every table. And so if you have a question during the panel, write it down. And an APSE board member will kind of be meandering through the audience to pick them up. And then they'll bring them up, and I'll try to group them. And then that way, then I'll just ask the panel members questions.